Good evening, everyone. Let's head over into Collectively Rewilding. All right, so here we are, and today is a makeup class. We were supposed to have this last Sunday, and I had posted something about it. I'm not sure if anyone happened to notice it, but, well, that's interesting. There we go. Just as I pushed refresh, it all started populating. And so this whole week is Earth Science Week. And that's kind of fun. It's my particular favorite science. Let's see. It's just not going to work for us tonight. I haven't been happy with the amount of posts that you could scroll through lately. It's been kind of weird. And so I'm sure, there we go. No, that's World Space Week. That's 2 weeks ago. Maybe I didn't feature it in the overall Collectively Rewilding featured zone. I sure thought I did, but it is Earth Science Week, and so that's the 12th through the 18th this year. And I ordered this fun little packet, and so if this class would have taken place when it was supposed to, that would have started off Earth Science Week, probably when I made that post as well. But this came in, and it's just this neat little kit that is actually for like educators and things like that. And it's for anyone really, but it's put together with pieces that a teacher could use in a schoolroom. And I love things like that. Of course, I have 3 years towards my teaching degree, but I wasn't happy with the overall education system. And there came a point where I couldn't really afford it. So now I'm grateful that I didn't try to go into teaching, kind of lucked into what I actually do now, and I get to decide what is being the curriculum of any given course and all of that. And I just think that that's the way that people who have earned the degree for teaching should be able to have in their own classes, and that's just not the way it is anymore. However, this is really fun. And so it came with the Deepwater Horizon Open Ocean Restoration Mesophotic and Deep Benthic Communities Project. And you can learn about everything they're doing. They're mapping and ground truthing. That's such a weird thing. I wonder what ground truthing is. Let's just check that out. Ground truthing. That sounds like new agey, right? The ground truthing is the process of collecting real-world data on the ground to verify the accuracy of information gathered through remote sensing, such as satellite imagery or AI models. Okay, very interesting. So they're verifying the truth or not of things that have been postulated, I guess you could say. They have habitat access assessment and evaluation, and they're showing it almost in a deep diving. Oh goodness, you have the drones, right? Like a deep diving drone. They might be big enough for people. I'm not really sure. And then coral propagation techniques development, active management and protection. And so you can scan these different codes, and I'll put all of this into my scanner and I'll upload it for you all. So it's the NOAA fisheries, the M as in Mary, D as in David, B as in boy, C as in Charles restoration page, the USGS coral propagation, and you can learn about deep Gulf habits, seafloor mapping, science at sea, coral propagation labs, and how we're restoring deep coral communities injured by the Deepwater Horizon oil spill. It's just really, really neat, and you can take it so much deeper. There's just so much going on, and I think it would be just as interesting for a lot of adults as it probably would be for a lot of children, right? I try to get any children that are around when I'm gardening, I always try to let them see what I'm doing, and there's always some that are interested, but not that many. So cute little bookmarks, that'll go into my bookmarks collection. And they talk about having a career in geology, which is super positive, definitely. And I love that. A little periodic table and critical materials innovation hub, developing substitutes, enhancing and diversifying supply, unlocking secondary resources, recycle and reuse, cross-cutting research. So this is definitely one that I want to check out. Rock and energy, uncovering the power of minerals and rocks. And again, you can take it really deep in. They have the little QR codes. Powering up with mined minerals. Graphite is critical in lithium-ion batteries, and it's such a pretty rock. Lithium-ion batteries store and release energy. And oh, lithium is pretty too. It's like a purple color. I did not realize that. See here, I can show you guys. And like I said, I'll scan this all in. We won't call tonight's episode a podcast because there's a lot of visual elements. And then copper and uranium, which, you know, when they show it on this card like this, it all looks very pretty, but these are a little rough. Copper not being quite so rough, but uranium, yuck. That's not my fun part. Two of the pieces I actually sent with my husband because they fit so well with what he does. He's been in different energy sourcing, from coal mines to natural gas fields to uranium and all the things in between. So he loves all of that stuff. We wouldn't think that we'd have that much in common, but we really do. And he supports everything that I do. And we hope counterbalances anytime that he's in a more damaging industry, right? Currently, he's in manufactured gas production, and that pulls different elements from the air. So it's like I tell him, I mean, we don't know that we're not doing damage when we're just sucking parts of the air out, right? But probably not as much as when you dig into the earth or when you completely start taking so much out of the seas and things like that. There's earth and space science education, and perhaps I could get my youngest daughter involved with that. She does definitely enjoy it. And there's an education hour. Elevate your earth and space science instruction with our teacher webinar series. I bet that's really interesting. I hope some of you check this out. It's really neat information. This is citizen science. This is something that anybody can get involved with. That's the point. They utilize citizens all over to help collect large amounts of data, right? So what is it? Citizen science, also known as participatory science or community science, is a form of open collaboration where members of the public participate in the scientific process to address real-world problems. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration collaborates with citizen scientists as part of the agency's work in science and education. Volunteer observations help inform our nation's prediction and forecasting of weather, the ocean and coasts. Excuse me. How can you get involved? And then again, this QR code will be in the community. You can also go to citizenscience.gov for a list of citizen science projects from across the federal government, or visit SCIS. Okay, so it's SCI Starter. So I'm not sure what the SCI stands for, but Sam Charlie Iguana Starter.org for the largest database of citizen science projects, right? Like that is so amazingly fun. Featured projects, measure precipitation, report the weather, survey and record marine debris. That's really important, right? Count river herring, engage in Earth system science. Very neat, very neat. There's an entire little newsletter here. It looks like it would not be quite up to the level that we typically read, so we won't dig into that. But as I said, I'll put all of this in here. This has got this has got information about Energy for Me and earthday.org, American Meteorological Science, I think I'm saying that right. Society, the National Park Service, Nevada Mining Association. Interesting that it would be Nevada specifically, and the American Association of Geographers. The Choose Energy K-12 outreach program raises awareness of society's energy needs, careers, and related educational programs by providing opportunities and resources for STEM teachers and students. So interesting. I had no idea all of these publications were out there, and they had just a huge list of really interesting publications, and you didn't pay anything for the publication. You just pay for the shipping and handling, right? And so their Earth Week Science Contest. I didn't get this information out to you quickly enough this year, but it's really neat. A World of Energy Possibilities Visual Arts Contest, and this is for children. And then that's grades K through 5. The Power of Tomorrow Essay Contest for grades 6 through 9. Capturing Energy in Motion Photography Contest, any individual worldwide. Energy Efficiency in Action, Small Changes, Big Impact, Video Contest, any individual or team worldwide. Very neat. And they did have to be submitted by yesterday, unfortunately. So I'm going to put this into the calendar for next week so that we're a little bit better prepared. And just be aware, capturing energy in motion is probably something like they do every year, right? It would make a lot of sense, although there's so many things for earth science. The 2024 photography contest entry by Ava Geyer was dewdrops on grass. Really cute. Interesting. I wonder if that was for children. It is pretty, but it's pretty simple at the same time. So I wonder what the criteria were last year. Careers in soil science. Ooh, that's my favorite, right? Choose Energy, Exploring Geothermal Energy and Granitic Plutons. Oh my goodness. It's a learning activity for folding of rock layers, intrusion of granitic pluton, fracturing and faulting, deposition of beds, and infiltration and heating of groundwater. Really interesting. I do love science. It is so much fun. Earth science specifically, right? And they have all of these little neat things, which for those of you around children, there are really some neat QR codes that they can check out that I will put in here for you all. And there's more information on the back about each of the different programs that are cutely depicted on the front, right? Different lessons for 6 through 8, virtual field trips, seeing resources beneath our feet with geophysics, empowering energy education with need. And they have these cute little worksheets. So definitely, if you're around children, you should throw them these little pieces and see if they're interested. It's definitely the kind of stuff I would have loved as a child, without any doubt. And so I gave the 2 neater posters really to my husband, but they don't match our community anyway. Earth Science does. This is through the, let me see here, American Geosciences Institute. So really, really neat. Oh, and Nevada, they talked about Nevada mining. It looks like the reason they chose that is because Nevada has loads of lithium. Very interesting. Lithium-rich brine evaporates at the Silver Peak mine in Nevada's Clayton Valley. I wouldn't be surprised if there's quite a bit in the salt fields going towards Nevada from Utah as well. I would definitely have to check it out. Another neat thing that they sent me is a calendar filled with all of these earth science days of the year, right? So I shared one earlier. It was Happy Archaeology Day. And I think that is what's listed down here too. Let me see if it'll show when we're in here in Zoom, and it's not going to. Silly things, how they don't work. But I believe that's what my Bing search bar is also showing. So how many of you like earth sciences? that something that any of you really ever enjoyed? I'm hearing crickets. I've probably been putting you guys to sleep then. It fascinates me. I'm definitely going to be checking out the information on soil science that was there. And so, excuse me, guys. This is Leaves, Root, and Fruit by Nicole Burke, and that is the woman who does the Gardenary certification. And so I thought that this is really more where our community is right now. So we would stop reading mini farming, instead read a book that really corresponds to what we've all been working on at this time in different levels, right? Me just bringing back the soil, not really trying to grow any types of fruits or vegetables. Several of you having various levels of success in growing those fruits and vegetables. And so now let's go ahead and jump into reading. And I will stop the video and perhaps record only from here for the podcast version, since nobody quite really was that interested in the earth sciences information there. All right, so this is a whole system that Gardenary is built on, and it's really about making gardening accessible. And she doesn't agree with square foot gardening, and I absolutely agree with her for the reasons that she doesn't. I would have modified it already myself, but I liked the idea of fitting more into the space. However, I just can't stand the idea of bare soil, as I've talked about multiple times with you guys. And square foot gardening really does leave that bare soil a lot of the times. So this is something that I will much more readily go for because, and I did share something. Let me just share her gardening channel really quickly. Excuse me, guys. Doesn't look like I have any extra YouTubes up right now for some reason. All right. When you look at the different things that she's put out, one of them is just so visually immediate to your eyes. And this is where she doesn't agree with square foot gardening. And I would have had a cover crop or mulch or something to that effect. Darn, I thought it was just right on the top of her video. And she shows how she would organize plants. But there we go. Do you see that right there? She's going to put a plant in each one of these circles instead of leaving all of that bare soil and space between plants. She's got them right in there next to each other. And I like that so much better. And so let's tear into what she talks about as why this is a new garden system. If you've put off gardening or quit gardening or not even tried gardening because you thought you didn't have enough space, enough sun, enough time, enough experience, or enough patience, this book is for you. These words, photos, and steps are for anyone who's not gardening because they don't yet have enough. What you're about to read isn't just a how-to book on gardening, it's a gardening system that matches what you already have with a plant that needs exactly what you've got. This 8-step system follows the order of plant growth and shows you that no matter how little or how much space, time, sun, or experience you have in any given season, there's always a plant you can grow right where you are, right away. There's something in these pages for every level of gardening skill, whether you're just starting out or you've been growing for a few seasons. The Leaves, Roots, and Fruit, or LFRF system, and these stories developed out of my own mistake-ridden gardening journey and my work helped of my own mistake-ridden gardening journey and my work helping thousands of gardeners, most claiming they had no green thumb, start filling our own harvest baskets even when we didn't quite have enough. If we've found a way to grow something beautiful and delicious out of what we already have, I know you can too. Keep up with your garden progress and find more support to grow with the Leaves, Roots, and Fruit Journal, available as a free download at leavesrootsandfruit.com. Part 1, the Leaves, Roots, and Fruit System. My dreams had no patience. Okay, I guess I have to read the caption of it. Usually that's more a part of the story. It's interesting how she writes. We need a gardener. We need a garden, I said to my husband Jason on the way home from visiting my parents, where my mom's cherry tomato vines were thick with sweet red fruit that our kids picked by the handful and ate straight off the plant. Before I said a word, I already had visions of strolling in from the backyard, my harvest basket full of homegrown food we would eat for dinner each night. My dreams had no patience. So as soon as I got home, we did what most people do when they're starting a garden. We drove straight to the home improvement store. We selected the largest, most promising tomato plants and proudly strapped them into the back seat of our minivan. There were only 99 things wrong with what we did here, but I'll start with 3. 1, we began with the tomato, one of the most demanding vegetables. Technically, it's a fruit, but we'll discuss that later. 2, we bought plants before we'd even begun to set up the garden space. 3, we planted in the middle of July, paying no attention to seasons or the time of year that tomato plants prefer. Fast forward 2 months, and I didn't need a harvest basket to carry the 3 tomatoes the raccoons hadn't eaten as I came in from a garden full of weeds. Unfazed by our lack of success in year 1, we planted tomatoes again a second summer, this time in small raised beds. We also attempted cucumbers in a pot on the deck and crossed our fingers when we planted a few watermelon seeds too. Though our garden setup was a little better and our timing improved, we rarely beat the raccoons to the tomatoes. We watched the cucumbers dry up by midsummer and we never saw a single watermelon. That second failed attempt nearly convinced me that gardening wasn't going to be for me. Gardening must be for people who grew up on a farm, who worked with plants their whole life, I thought. People who had way more time on their hands. People who had that thing called a green thumb. After 2 rounds of disappointment, it was clear that we couldn't keep doing what we had been doing and expect success. We needed a do-over. The next year, instead of digging into the lawn to plant our veggies, we built taller raised beds and ordered a truckload of the best soil we could get. Instead of heading to the store for plants, we toured our friend's garden and accepted some of their extra seed packets with names like Rocky Top Lettuce, Dwarf Siberian Kale, Wild Rocket Arugula, Purple Mustard, so many plants I'd never even thought about having in a garden. Once the raised beds were set and filled with soil, we opened the seed packets and went for it. And in just a few months, we harvested 1,000,000 times more than we did from our first 2 gardens combined. I may be exaggerating here, but not by much. For the next 6 months, we were picking something every day, enjoying salads, smoothies, and delicious garden fresh dishes, and sharing armloads of harvest with friends and neighbors. It took 3 seasons and a lot of dead plants for my garden-to-table vision to come true. But when I was skipping past the big sections of the produce aisle, because all these foods were growing in my kitchen garden, it was official. I was definitely a gardener now, and there wasn't a single tomato in sight. The 8 steps to success. I think she means there wasn't a single tomato in sight in her garden, right? Her writing style is a little bit unique. The 8 steps to success. My own garden journey taught me the hard way what I'll share inside this book. You don't need to be a pro or possess a green thumb to become a gardener. You don't even need a certain amount of something to begin. Once you have a garden system, growing a little or a lot of your own organic, delicious food can be part of your everyday life any day of the year. That first summer, if I'd looked more closely at my mom's garden, I would have noticed that her space was mostly green, full of leaves with hints of colorful fruit here and there. I would have seen that those sweet tomatoes were growing on vines that had been planted months earlier. A more thorough look would have shown me that beneath that tall vine of tomatoes were plants growing at every level below. Bushes of basil, arugula leaves, garlic, and green onions too. And the secret to success in the garden, I ultimately realized, was to follow the vine down to the ground level and start there, first with leaves, then with fruits, and finally with fruiting plants. Let me explain. Pretend there's a staircase between you and the ability to grow just about anything in your own garden. You're standing at the bottom, and your biggest harvest goals are waiting at the top. Imagine there are 8 steps on this staircase, and each step represents a plant's increasing need for sunlight, space, time, and attention. The lower the step, the less the plants need from you and nature to thrive. The higher up the staircase, the more resources and care the plants require. You following me? This set of steps is a gardening system. You can start your journey at the first level, and with each step, learn how to grow a new set of delicious and nutritious plants that you harvest and eat during your climb to the top. Your first step won't require a lot. Not a lot of sunlight, not a lot of time, and not a lot of space. In fact, it's possible to begin inside on your windowsill. With each step you climb, you'll need more light, more space, and more time. More time for your plants to grow and time you commit to caring for these plants. The plants on step 1 are small and manageable inside your home, but by step 7, they're sprawling, large enough to create a maze for you to walk through. You might be tempted to take a flying leap straight up to 6. That's where the tomatoes grow. But trust me, it's more fun and less frustrating to go one step at a time. What do you guys think about that? Does that seem like a good way to approach it?
Yes.
Does that feel more comfortable to you, Vanessa?
Yeah.
And do you see that right there, what she's talking about? You started with the bigger plants, right? Not quite to your squashes, watermelons, or corn yet. Those are 7 and 8, right? 6 is tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, things of a pretty good size. You can let them sprawl. We had some on my parents' property, and I don't like tomato cages and things like that, though I have learned where they have some value. I think that pruning is more really my style. I don't know. I'll have to play with it, right? One way or the other, a tomato plant can become a huge, huge monstrosity of a plant if you let it. And so those are big plants, right? And so with the first step, any guesses as to what might be on the first step? Go ahead, Vanessa. I want to hear.
I don't know.
No? All right. Well, let's dig in. Grow with your plant. Ask not what your plant can do for you, but what you can do for your plant. I didn't get the quote exactly right, but the point is that having empathy makes learning to garden so much simpler. Though it's tempting to focus only on the harvest basket, it's actually more productive to think less about what we as gardeners want and more about what our plants require to flourish. In other words, plant motives. If we can learn what motivates plants to grow, and if we garden with those goals in mind, keeping plants alive becomes less of a mystery. I became aware of plant motives when my children were little. I was constantly looking for activities that were fun and non-competitive and didn't result in a huge mess in the living room. This translated into a lot of hikes and time at the park. And on one fall afternoon, our walk brought us along a path of giant oak trees. After just a few steps, my littlest, new to walking, fell. Oops! When she stood up and brushed herself off, we realized she'd tripped over a huge pile of acorns. To keep her from crying, we made a game of counting the acorns around our feet. 1, 2, 3. We lost count somewhere around 398. This acorn incident had happened right after my first failed garden, and counting all those seeds on the ground piqued my disappointed gardener's interest. Why on earth, I wondered, would this one tree drop thousands, if not millions of acorns right below its own branches every year? I'm no botanist, but at least one answer seemed clear. That oak tree was hedging its bets. It was doing everything it could to keep its species alive. Not just alive, but thriving, spreading, multiplying. Those oak trees helped me start thinking about what makes plants tick, or rather, keep on growing. I didn't have all the answers, but if the acorns were any indication, it was becoming clear that plants are mainly motivated to survive and to make more plants. And I was thinking that this was very good news. Anytime you feel confused in the garden, think about this first. Plants are dying to survive. They need and want to live through all their stages of life, and they don't want to die before they've created hundreds, if not thousands, more plants just like themselves. Aha moments like these help us realize that gardening is less of a power struggle and more like a partnership. By focusing on what plants want to do, you'll know what matters most to the plants you're hoping to grow. When you view gardening as working alongside plants, helping them do the things they're naturally motivated to do, the process of gardening becomes simpler, even if you do find yourself falling down every now and again. The leaves, roots, and fruit system guides you to grow with your plants, focusing at first on plants with harvests that are ready quickly and without much tending, and then graduating to plants that need more time and space. before harvest as your experience in the garden grows. Grow with your plants. LFR, and that's leaves, roots, and fruits, follows the growth cycle of plants, catching certain plants at each level of their growth so that you get to enjoy the success of quick growth and impressive harvests within days of planting your first seed. As you plant more and harvest more with some of the simplest plants, you'll build the experience necessary to be ready to grow plants that need more time and attention. And step by step, you'll eventually learn how to grow just about anything in the kitchen garden, not because of lack or a green thumb. That is just so weird. Not because of luck. No, okay, not because of luck or a green thumb, but because you now understand how plants grow. To grow with our plant, we first need to know how our plants grow. Seeds, roots, sprouts, stems, leaves, flowers, fruits, seeds. That's the full growth cycle of most kitchen garden plants. So let's read through that again. Seeds, roots, sprouts, stems, leaves, flowers, fruit, seeds. Some plants skip the fruiting stage, but almost all plants eventually produce some type of flower to house some type of seed. And every plant, of course, produces leaves, lots of them. Once you know all the pieces of the growth puzzle, you'll start to understand how the garden system works. Seeds. Oh, let's go back and read her little inset here. Four things about plants. What makes a plant and not something else? What makes a plant and not something else? There are at least four things. Plants feed themselves, and we're complaining that it's difficult to be a gardener. Puppies, kittens, toddlers, even goldfish need us to feed them every day. But no matter how many plants you're growing, you can rest assured that if placed in the right spot, each one will gather its own food supply quite well on its own, thank you very much. Plants don't have feet. It's a good thing plants can feed themselves because they can't get up and walk to the fridge. Plants stay planted. It's this fact that makes choosing a location for your plants so important. Plants are tough. Plant cells can be hit with rain and wind, and for some plants, even hail and snow, and still not break. Tough as nails, tough as plants sounds more like it. Plants can grow forever. Under certain conditions, plants never stop growing. Along stems and roots is a type of plant tissue with cells that multiply again and again, so those stems and roots continuously grow longer and wider. They can't stop, won't stop, unless a storm or a hard freeze or a gardener steps in. Put these four things together and you realize plants are exceptionally smart. The plants you'll grow on each step in your gardening journey know how to grow themselves. They know what to do every step of the way. Now you just need to make it suitable for them to do their thing. We'll go ahead and finish out this chapter. It should work pretty well. Seeds. We start with a seed. A seed is the reproductive part of the plant that is ready for growth. Most seeds have three structures: a seed coat for protection, an embryo, complete with roots, stems, and leaves inside, that will turn into the new plant once the seed germinates, and a food store, called the endosperm, to feed the baby plant until it can produce its own food through photosynthesis. To transition from seed to seedling, a seed needs three things: water, oxygen, and warmth. First, the seed's tough outer coating absorbs nearby H2O and oxygen and begins to swell. The cells inside the seed embryo enlarge. Then, warmth from the soil gives more energy to the cells within the seed, speeding up the cell replication process. Finally, the embryo becomes so swollen that the seed coat breaks open and the first root, known as the radicle, emerges into the soil. The endosperm provides a quick food source for the embryo, and germination is now considered complete. The seed has moved into the next stage of growth: roots and sprouts. Once the primary root escapes the seed coating, the seed is officially a sprout. As this first root makes its way into the soil, it gathers new supplies for the sprouting plant: more water, more nutrients, more air. Next, up comes the mesocotyl, the first part of the stem. Instead of growing down the radicle, the mesocotyl reaches through the crown of the seed, up and up in search of light until it breaks the soil surface. Attached to the mesocotyl are the cotyledons, a set of two false leaves or seed leaves. so called because they are simple and do not look like the plant's adult foliage. Cotyledones. I'm pretty sure that's how it's said. The cotyledones are the first leaves to absorb the rays of sunlight and bring a new source of energy to the tiny plant, powering it to the head into the next stage of growth. Stems. The initial stem is the second part of the plant to appear above the soil line after the cotyledon breaks the soil surface. The stem produces new cells at its tip to grow the first set of true leaves, those that look and function like the leaves the plant will produce for the rest of its life. Stems are the support structure for all the leaves, flowers, and fruit that will come during the plant's life cycle. Its cell walls are the toughest of all the cells in the plant. Because stems provide the highway for food dispersal and reproduction, they have built-in protectors that mean not only better success for the plant in the wild, but also more success in your garden. Leaves. Leaves are the outgrowths of the plant that are connected directly to the stem. They are the workers of the plant, gathering energy from the sun, taking in air, and soaking up water from the atmosphere and the stem to make food and energy for the plant all day long. Remember, plants feed themselves. Each new leaf is both a factory and a warehouse. Leaves use chlorophyll to turn sunlight into plant food and the most necessary part of the plant for its continued growth. Sure, roots provide stability and nutrient uptake, stems are important for support and structure, and flowers are critical for reproduction. But without leaves, there would be no more stem or root or flower or fruit because there would be no energy to power growth. Flowers. After stems and leaves come flowers, and flowers are all about survival. Plant motives matter. In a plant's life cycle, flowers appear after the stems and leaves reach a certain point of maturity or when the plant senses that conditions are changing and it needs to speed up its reproductive cycle. Flowers contain the reproductive organs necessary for a plant to create many more of its own kind. While wild animals hedge their bets by bearing several offspring in each litter, flowers are next level, creating hundreds, if not thousands of times more chances at continuing their kind. Most flowers include both male and female parts and may or may not require the aid of an insect, animal, or other outside influence for pollination. When a creature is necessary for pollination, the flower almost always has a way to attract it. Perhaps multiple petals that serve as a landing pad, a long throat to encourage nectar sifting, or a fragrance. Plants may not be able to speak, but they're certainly not silent. They have their own ways of getting assistance to make reproductive magic happen. Fruit. Assuming the flower is pollinated by bee or butterfly or wind, the plant enters one of its final stages, setting fruit. In most cases, each flower represents one fruit, and the fruit often forms right inside the flower itself. Fruit consists of an outer coating, an inner layer of tissue, and oftentimes lots and lots of seeds. Fruit typically takes as long to ripen as it does to form, so the larger the fruit, the more days you will need, not only for the fruit to grow to its full size, but also for it to fully ripen and sweeten. To the plant, fruit is its promise that its species will keep growing for seasons and years to come. When you bite into that tomato or slice open the cucumber, you'll see why. Hidden inside that protective skin and juicy pulp are dozens, if not hundreds, of seeds. The fruit not only protects the precious seeds, but also ensures the seeds will be transported by animal or human to places where the mama plant can't go, where it can then grow into another plant, same but different in the next season. Plants don't have feet, but they still know how to travel. Seeds. Plants end their life cycle as they begin, with seeds. After a flower turns to fruit, and that fruit hangs on the vine, bush, or tree, one of a few things will happen. Left on its own, the fruit will slowly crack open, wilt, or dry up, and the seeds will either remain inside the dry pod or fall to the ground along with the spoiled pulp. If the fruit happens to catch the eye of a hungry animal or human passing by, that fruit will get eaten, and perhaps the seeds will be discarded or passed along in a, fertilized way. Most seeds need to dry and go through a dormant stage before they can sprout and start again. They need a break, a month or even a full calendar year, before they can begin the process all over again. But don't let their sleepy appearance fool you. Hidden inside that pebble-like seed is the promise of many future harvests and a clear plan to do it all again next season. Give this seed a rest, and soon it will burrow down into the dark earth, swell with water and warmth, and burst open to reveal the start of another plant that will, with the right conditions, repeat this process again and again and again. And so next we will read Set Up for Success. And I absolutely agree again with Nicole Burke. I can't remember her exact percentages, but she says that proper setup is something like 70% of your success in the garden. And that is so true. Timing and maintenance are important, but they are so secondary. If you have everything set up right, including water systems, right, and you're giving any kind of fertilization that's needed, right, whether that's seaweed or you choose some more mechanized variation, all of these different systems are really what will have the most impact. The right soil, the right sun, the right plants around it, just all of that has such an impact. I think she says it's like 70% setup, 20% timing, and 25% timing, and 5% maintenance, or something like that. I don't know that I would exactly agree with her percentages, but I do agree with her overall ideology around it. And I think that learning in that systematic way, right, where we talked a week or so ago about starting off with just sprouts, right? I will probably go ahead and do a few different projects tomorrow and film them for you guys. So we're probably going to start some sprouts that we're going to have in our very, very low natural light house. For some reason, and I cannot figure it out, the light just doesn't come into the homes in Utah, where this area is. At least it's something about the positioning of the homes, or that they all have too much overhang, but it doesn't matter. Apartment building after apartment building, stick-built home after stick-built home, we don't get a lot of light inside our house. It's really hard on us, actually. And so we do our best to let the light in where it can. And even with such low light, we can have these seedlings growing. Now, I've tried it in one of these little plastic containers, and I didn't like it at all. I just like soil. It's really the way to go. I can show you when I do all of this tomorrow what it looks like. I'll bring out my little seed starter. I still have it, and it's for sprouting. It's not a seed starter, it's a sprouter. And you can keep it in your refrigerator even, right? And the whole thing will work, I believe. Maybe not in your refrigerator, but I think so. I'll have to read the instructions on it again. Whatever, we didn't care for it. But we're going to put it in soil and put it in, I haven't completely decided, probably in the kitchen somewhere. And that's on the somewhat north-facing side of the house, right? As I've mentioned, we're not quite to the secondary directions, but we're definitely not on the primary directions. And so it's all a little bit different, but there's only ambient light. And we may put one in, if I can talk her into it, into our oldest daughter's room. She has the best light in the house. And it seems like that for every room that I had one time where I had the best light in the house for my room. So kind of funny just the way things work out. And then there's also going to be an article that drops in Collectively Rewilding in the morning, and it's about pickling jalapenos. So of course we didn't have the opportunity to grow our own jalapenos this year, but I purchased some jalapenos. They were on sale and they looked gorgeous, and my husband loves jalapenos really in any form. So I thought it'd be really fun to do that with you guys. And it seems like I have one other project that I might try to do and film for you all and throw that in there. I wish that I were more readily able to interact with you while I'm doing it. And since it'll be from my phone, I may be able to set that up, but I make no promises, right? But look for those. I think it'll be fun. The 3 little projects. We're also going to spread both the urea and the seaweed fertilizer over the day tomorrow. So as usual, I have so much packed into my day. We're going to put the urea, as it hasn't had enough time to hygienize, right? We're not going to grow food on it. So it doesn't need that process. It's just going to go onto the lawn and then get covered up with snow and be more active in the soil than it would be frozen in the shed, right? Not as active as it would be if it were in an actually warm environment. We were going to place it in the garage, which would have been better than the shed and kept it from freezing, but it still wouldn't have been actively warm. And so in the soil, it's going to do probably maybe not quite as good as in the garage, or maybe a little bit better, right? But definitely better than frozen in the garden shed. And so with this depleted soil, I am just so sad when I look at the yard. It was so pretty when we bought it. They were, propping it up falsely with the extra watering. And so we have to start over completely. And I want it back. I want that health to the soil to be back. And so I'm probably going to order the clover and grass seeds tomorrow. I don't really like Home Depot. It costs so much more than Lowe's or Walmart or anything when I'm able to compare price to price. Home Depot's like trendy, or maybe they have the biggest selection. And so when we needed an air conditioner, Walmart was out in that moment. 2 days later, and they had it, but they were out in that moment. So we spent something like $200, maybe even $250 more to get basically the same air conditioner from Home Depot. And that bothers my penny pinching soul, right? So I'm probably going to order the seed rather than trying to drive over to the Lowe's that is in Magna. That's our closest Lowe's, the one that we utilized when we lived in the last place that we rented. And so I'll be spreading that seed soon. And that's definitely something, if you guys are interested in doing something like that, not necessarily in the South for Miss Vanessa, but for all the rest of us here in this particular gathering, this is an excellent time to put those kinds of seeds out in the ground. They'll overwinter, and then they'll be better able to compete with the weeds than if you try to seed them in the spring, right? So something to consider. And so we're going to bombard the backyard with 3 different types of clover. I may or may not include some cover crops. I'm thinking probably not, because we want to just be able to mow it over and have the plants continue. I may look into some wildflowers eventually to put back in there that can be mown over. There are certain types of wildflowers that when you mow them over, they just become really compact plants with smaller flowers. It's really neat. And I would love to have that intermixed in especially the backyard, but maybe the front yard as well, right? So got to start somewhere, and the clover and the grasses are going to do better with what we have to start with this next year. It's going to be so much better though, because we've brought life back to the backyard, and we have gotten enough nutrients back into the front yard that there's life showing there again as well. It was never dead soil like the soil in the backyard. It just had been completely depleted. And so the plants couldn't sustain themselves and they went dormant, right? They're still there. They'll come back, and they are coming back over the majority of the yard. There's one spot up in the far right corner that's been completely overtaken by weeds, unfortunately. But the rest of it that's coming back is very much nice, good grass and crabgrass, of course, right? But that's better than dormant, dead-looking lawn. And so the maple tree is still suffering. It makes me feel a little bit better though, because we're going to have to cut it down, which is so sad. However, we're going to add back in at least 2 cherry, and I want to 2 cherry trees, excuse me. I want to have talked to the city before the spring and know if they're going to allow me to put peach trees on those easements, right, that are outside of the sidewalk. They're still your responsibility, but they technically are the city's property. And you have to talk to them before you can do anything major, like cut down the nasty trees that they mistakenly planted, and they recognize that error now, right? But do they want to allow me to put in fruit trees that are going to make a mess, right? So hopefully I will be able to get that permission. If not, then it's not, and I will have a peach tree in the front yard with the cherry trees. Otherwise, if I can get the 2 peach trees in the front, we'll put an apple tree with the cherry trees in the front yard. And we'll get the smaller variations of each, because we don't want to create the same kinds of problems that we just eliminated and we'll have to eliminate still with the maple tree, right? So definitely when you're thinking of things, and that is one thing that Nicole Burke said about leaves, roots, and fruit, that she wishes she would have thought of berries and trees, and that should have really been like a 9th step, right? Or even maybe a 9th and 10th step, berries and trees. And it's very true. Berries and trees, they are longer lasting structured plants, right? There's perennials that come back and come back and come back, but they rebuild their plant structures so much of the time. And then you have bushes and trees. And so those bushes and trees, they leave that woody structure and they reuse that every year. And so they take more maintenance. Again, that's what she's talking about, right? So a really interesting way to think about the life all around us, and certainly the life that we're trying to bring into our own environment. All right, guys, let's take a quick look at the calendar for next week. And I'm hoping that my tongue will wrap around the words a little bit better as I get used to her style. But boy, it really did throw me off there. And I've also had yet another extremely busy day. We had to go all the way into Salt Lake to get my car after it got serviced. And then the girls wanted to go and get Halloween costumes. So I might have broken and gotten my first Halloween costume in, oh, I don't know, 10 or 15 years. I'm not promising. I'm not saying anything. I just might have, right? Well, so are you guys doing anything fun for Halloween? Anyone? Oh, somebody's egging the house again. We have some teenagers probably that live in the apartment complex behind the house, and they apparently have angered my husband. So sorry about that, guys. We will have, again, tomorrow, Yarn Yard with Tall Tales, but before that, tea and talk with Miss Tammy, and maybe she'll have some interesting stuff to share with everyone about the class that she took for her gardening certification. Just to let you know, Tammy, I included that when I did this whole huge business plan, trying to sign up for one of the $10,000 skip business grants last night. I did this whole thing, accidentally signed up for the annual plan, thinking I was signing up for the monthly plan to get this thing printed. But your name is actually, I think I put maybe your name. If I didn't put your name, then your name is in with the board members. But the two certifications that you're getting and the certification that I'm getting are absolutely a part of talking about all the content that we have going forward. And it really, really adds a lot of wonder and value to the business plan. So just to let you know. So that will be tea and talk with Miss Tammy tomorrow at 12 o'clock noon Pacific, 1 o'clock p.m. Mountain, 2 o'clock p.m. Central, and 3 o'clock p.m. Eastern. And I will be back with you guys again for Yarn Yard for Tall Tales tomorrow, 7:30 p.m. Pacific, 8:30 Mountain, 9:30 Central, and 10:30 Eastern. Same time, same place, normal day. All right, everybody. I hope you all have a wonderful evening. Please unmute and feel free to say good night.
Good night, everybody.
Night.
Bye.
Enjoy your evening. See you tomorrow.